Howdy, all you delicious people. I'm here today to review Blade the Series, Episode 6. So, this is going to be, again, another Krista-heavy, Krista-heavy episode, a star-heavy episode. So, honestly, in this episode, normally I'd have, a cell phone with me. That is to show the cast list of this episode. But really, we honestly don't actually need that in this episode. Really, there are very few players in this. There are actually very few new characters as well. Really, the only two added characters into this episode are Charlotte and Thorne. And so I don't think I need to have like an IMDb for that, because of how very few people there are. Really, in this episode, we are immediately to showcase Krista going into that sweat lodge thing that is to be put together by the Lycan vampires. And really, we are to see what that is, what the procedure of that is. And having Krista and Chase eventually going and finding where Boone is and take him out. Blade is to have the continuation from the last episode of that doctor who had gave his own life by shooting himself in the head. Blade is to take from that story and to try and eventually figure out that Krista had done a drop-off to this girl named Vanessa, and now we are going to actually have a payoff from that, why Krista needed to do that drop-off, and how Vanessa could actually be connected to this Dr. Jeffrey character, who I would assessed or assumed had put some kind of something for Vanessa to all of a sudden now be valuable. So, going also into this episode, we are to also have us really get to know more about the drug that had been put on Fritz, the Aurora drug. We are to hear a little bit more about that. Chase is to be shipped off to Berlin to handle this whole Vanessa thing, and then Blade is to also make his way to Berlin to actually have some kind of action sequence in this episode. But it seems fairly little compared to all the Krista stuff that they have to cover in this episode. And also that they have to showcase the new threat of this place, which is to basically have Charlotte kind of take over this house and kind of tell everybody what to do. So, with that said, I think I've already kind of prepared you for what is happening in this episode, even kind of getting to a little bit of almost spoiler territory a little bit. So, with this episode, I would just say that this is just compared to, the last episode, this episode is just oakley dokley. It's okay, compared to the last episode, because at least it, continues on to what we are doing. So it's just an oakley dokley episode. It's, compared to some of the other episodes, some of the early ones, I like some of the early ones compared to this one, but it is what it is. Because we just have a goofy thing going on in this episode. It's just really just the goof. So, let's get on to the goof, and let's get into the geef. So, it's time for me to go into double 5-time territory and go into spoiler time. Spoiler time. It's about that time I'm going to spoil this episode. So I have fun. I make fun with some of the stuff that like, cause like I have fun like watching these reviews. Like sometimes it doesn't seem like that. Like there's sometimes where it does honestly feel like there is an arduous process watching certain kind of stuff. But because there's some stuff where I'm like, well, I think it'll go well, but like, do I actually want to invest in this? Do I want to take the time in doing it? And you kind of have this like back and forth about it, where you're kind of fighting yourself about whether or not like yeah, I'm probably gonna like not enjoy exactly 100%, but like maybe I'll find something out of it. I think that's what this show is really providing for me. It's like, well, like maybe I'll just get something out of it. Maybe I'll just finally have really and fully fledgedly watched the show compared to probably at some point where I might have left off its original airing and whatever. Because I have the series on Blu-ray and DVD disc, so like I could watch this at any point in time. I thought it was justifiable enough to go and watch this and buy the copy of it. So really knowing full well what I was going to get into. But yeah, like if anything, one thing that I have to really demand that I say, like there's some people that might feel when I have said kind of like, oh my god, it's another Krista episode, it's another Star episode. Like the only grievance that I have about that is because I wish that Krista would have actually been a more important character in the Blade mythos of things. Like how in Blade Trinity they eventually added in like Whistler's daughter and eventually added in the Night Stalkers. Like I wish they kind of would have done something like that in the show. Like Krista just feels like a random person that they added for the show. And that's my only gripe about this. If honestly, like, if Krista would have been some kind of tie to the Whistler family, or maybe could have been somehow attached or tied to Blade's family and or something, then maybe I would have been like much more okay about this, about how this show was to go on. And like Krista is winning me over through some of these episodes, but it's just the fact that I'm like, but I wish that her character would have been held as something that would have been much more important, that would have been much more of a person that I was going to be like, ooh, like, oh, so this adds a lot to the Blade mythos of things, and like, so this person has a actual code name behind them, or like how like Arrow, like every single person of Arrow had to be having a code name, had to have importance, and had to even have a costume of their own at some point. Whereas Krista is just like, oh, she's just military girl. Okay. So that's like, there's no flashiness to Krista. She's just like the good-looking woman that that I think wins whoever over just because she's good-looking. But also, like, she acts well. She probably acts a lot better than some of the other people in this show, in all brutal honesty. Because no rungs of acting with this show. So I like Krista. I like her. I do, believe me. It has nothing to do with gender. It just has something to do with the fact that, like, I wish she would have, like, had a much more, like, tying into something when coming in here, and she didn't. So moving on. I took too much time to talk about that. So let's get into spoilers of this episode, because, yeah, let's get into the spoiler time. Spoiler time. It's about that time I'm going to spoil this episode if I haven't already. So, we, in the very beginning of this episode, are having Krista, who is to drive out in daylight. Krista's just driving out, just having a really good time. She's like, you know what, I'm feeling great. Feeling great. This is great. I'm out in the sun. I'm getting my tan on. And so all of a sudden, Krista is to see Zach Starr, and Zach has his familiar tattoo that's on his neck. Honestly, if I were to go back into probably photos of Zach at the beginning of the show, or when he was in the pilot, more than likely, maybe that tattoo probably would not be there, but I don't know. Maybe I should look back in case of continuity or whatever. So, Chris is all of a sudden talking to Zach, and he's like, you know what, like, you're kind of out at the wrong time of day, aren't you? And Star is like, well, if anything, I just wanted to feel the sun for once. If anything, I just wanted to, like, pretend that I'm here. And so Zach is to usher Krista in to push her to eventually find where actually Boone is. So Krista is to see where Boone is actually where he's located. So Boone is grabbing onto some diner lady into the trunk of his car to go and have both Boone and this woman go to this other vampire house so he can make an offering to them and also ask for their protection. So Krista eventually comes out of this blood bath, like as if she was in a spa. And so Krista gets out of this bath and hovers to the side. Somebody throws a towel over her, I guess to try to avoid them having any kind of skin shots or whatever. So Chase demands to ask Krista, like, hey, what did you see? And Frederick is like, give her time. And Chase is like, no, I want to know. And Krista mentions, like, I know where Boone is. So we cut to title screen, and so now we have to focus on some Blade stuff. Blade is to eventually have some tail end stuff that he is to supposedly resolve from the Dr. Fredericks thing. The guy who had shot his head and killed himself. So Blade is to go and find out that it seems that the girl who was previously on a previous show named Vanessa, it seems that she has a bun in the oven, but it doesn't seem all that quite human. And I guess the bag that Krista was giving Vanessa was some kind of payoff for her to do this procedure to have this vampire baby put inside of her by this Dr. Jeffrey. So Blade eventually is to go and take a kind of a heat signature of Vanessa, and her chest is glowing blue, and it doesn't make sense, assuming that there's going to be a vampire baby inside of her. So Blade is to figure out, like, hey, there's something up with Vanessa, and I have to go and grab this girl. But we have Krista and Chase going and chasing after Boone. So Krista and Chase make their way to this house where Boone is trying to get protection in. So Krista and Chase try to go after Boone, kill off all the other vampires in this house, and Boone is holding hostage one of the one girl that he brought in with him. and Krista is trying to stop Boone. So Boone goes and slits the throat of this girl, tosses it in front of Krista, and Krista is to still be fighting the fact that she is still thirsty. She still wants blood. Because Krista did go, when she was done with that whole sweat lodge thing, she tried to inject numerous amounts of serum inside of her, but it really feels like it wasn't enough. And Fredericks did talk to Krista, and mentioned how normal people would be in this thing for like about like half an hour or less, and this girl was in there for like 5 hours. So it means that really Krista was really fighting the process of it all, and there's a reason for that. And so Krista mentions to Fredericks, well, the reason why I was trying to stall for time is because Boone was actually my lover. And Fredericks was like, yeah, I'm sure he was. Yeah, uh-huh. So Chase is to tell Krista, hey, it's time to go after Boone. And Fredericks eventually finds one of Star's vials of serum left. And so Fredericks is trying to figure out what the heck had gone on. Fredericks is talking to one of his people, and they are coming to the conclusion that it seems that Star isn't like one of Marcus's people, and maybe Fredericks is thinking that maybe he can pull her away from this house and have her be his. Or something, maybe like double agent her or something. So anyways, back at the bloody mess. So Krista is now being tempted to suck the life out of this woman. And Chase tries to get Krista to go along with her to try to take down Boone. Because Boone had locked himself into this bathroom with this guy who was there. And Chase is eventually making her way, figuring out that Boone had hid in this bathroom because someone had kind of opened this door a little bit and then closed it. So Chase just starts thrusting bullets into this bathroom, and there's a vampire who is to be ashed inside of it. So both Krista and Chase are to look into this bathroom, and it seems that everything is dead and gone, and so they naturally assumed that they had taken out Boone. But Boone was just hiding behind the door, and Boone kind of like pokes his head out, just like, like you didn't get me still. So both Krista and Chase go back to Marcus to mentioned that they had killed Boone. All of this is all over. And Marcus is like, well, great. Well, Krista, you go on ahead. Like, I need to talk to Chase for a little bit because I need to send her to Berlin. So Chase is to go to Berlin to try and protect Vanessa, who Vanessa is going to Berlin to, I guess, have her baby eventually getting delivered. Or forcibly to be delivered, I'm assuming, or assessing. I could be wrong, because baby did not come out in this episode. They were maybe going to quite possibly induce her labor, but like maybe that didn't happen. So, or I'm assessing that didn't happen in time because vampire baby wasn't getting delivered for pizza deliver. But before Blade is to go off to Berlin, Star is to have Blade inject her numerous times with serum, thinking that it's not enough, and Blade is like, dude, you have more than enough in you. Like, if anything, like, you should be fine now. And Chris is like, no, I don't think I'm fine. Like, if anything, Blade, for you, it's easy because you're half human, but I have nothing human in me left. So, like, it's much harder for me. And then Blade is like, well, boo-hoo! I've been a vampire longer than you have, so boo-hoo for you! No, I wish he could have said that, but, like, oh, this is so sour grapes. This is such sour grapes for you, Star. Anyways, Blade goes off to Berlin, and there is, like, a airport person there that is to be on Blade's side and is to give him all kinds of weapons to be able to use for his mission. I'm like, hey man, what kind of shady is this? Blade goes to find this facility that houses Vanessa because Krista goes and finds a book with blueprints of this building, and so Krista gives this blueprint to Shen, and I think Shen gives it to so they can figure out where they're supposed to go. Blade goes and kills everybody at this facility and takes Vanessa. Chase, of course, does not get killed in this episode because why would she? Blade scrambles with Vanessa to make it out of there, and so Blade is basically taking Vanessa with him to eventually hide her away into a place that is much more safe for her to just be hiding away from these people. And eventually they're probably going to induce her labor and eventually find out what the heck that this baby actually is. So Star is to... I'm hoping that I'm kind of covering everything. Let's talk about, before we get back to more Star stuff, let's talk about Thorne and Charlotte. So both Thorne and Charlotte arrive from this plane, and so they obviously look like big headshots, or big shots, like big suited people that are menacing and whatever. So we are to naturally assume that probably the big head honcho is probably the Thorne guy, but he's just the butler to Charlotte, because Charlotte is actually the much older vampire that is to be in control. So Charlotte goes to Marcus to kind of control everything that's going on, to basically call the shots from here on out. But really, she doesn't have much really to do in this episode. Really, she is to just, from all of her jet lag, have Marcus give her something young for Charlotte to consume. And so Charlotte is brought some girl that hasn't been a vampire for very long, and eventually they have this whole dialogue out between one another. But pushing on, so to try to call this a little bit quicker. So Star is to eventually go upon her own to get back into the place that has the Aurora. Star goes and takes one of the samples and then runs off into this sewer where she is met by Marcus. Star wants to take the Aurora, and Marcus tells her not to, because that's not actually what Star is doing. Like, she wants to take the sample to Blade, and Marcus is telling her not to because actually Fritz, it looked like everything was working out well for Fritz, but actually Marcus mentions that eventually Fritz, shortly thereafter, before he would have died, would have started to decompose anyways, and that this Aurora would not have worked. So Marcus is telling Krista, it's like, you need to really have a choice here. It's either you want to consistently try to be who you were before, or give in to us now and be with us and be on our side, and stop living in the past. So Krista has to make this decision, and she is to immediately grab onto the hand of Marcus and go with him back into the house, and kind of realize that, like, she's pledging her allegiance to Marcus, and I'm assuming or assessing that Marcus has had this, like, connection between Krista that just goes beyond her, like, being sired by him. So eventually that is just how this episode is to end. I think I covered most of the stuff in this episode, but there might have been a thing here or there that I forgot about or missed about. So with that, yeah, like, there is very few things going on with this episode, so it's kind of really very easy to review compared to others, where I'm spending, like, even almost as close to the episode as I normally would, just because there's, like, just kind of very few things going on, and so it was pretty easy to get all this done. So with that said, I am going to get out of here. Bye, everybody. Bye, everybody.